I am 28 years old, and for 5 of those years, I was married to Liam. Our fifth anniversary was supposed to be a celebration, a quiet dinner for two at a nice restaurant downtown. That was the plan. But Liam's mother, Margaret, had other ideas. She insisted on joining us. She said 5 years was a milestone that the whole family should acknowledge. Liam, as always, gave in to her. He told me it would be easier than arguing. He promised it would still be our night. I knew that was a lie the moment he said it, but I agreed. I was tired of fighting the same battle over and over. I was tired of being the bad guy who tried to keep him from his mother. So there we were. Me, Liam, and Margaret, sitting at a table for three in a restaurant filled with couples. The air was thick with her perfume and my resentment. She spent the first hour talking about her friends, her garden, and how much Liam looked like his father when he was young. She barely looked at me. I was just a piece of furniture in the background of her son's life. I tried to make conversation. I asked Liam about his day at work. Margaret answered for him. I mentioned a movie I wanted to see. Margaret said it sounded dreadful. Finally, the waiter brought our champagne. Liam had ordered it for our toast. He picked up his glass, a nervous smile on his face. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he might actually say something meaningful. He opened his mouth to speak, but Margaret cut him off. She stood up, her own glass held high. Her voice was loud, slicing through the quiet chatter of the restaurant. "I would like to propose a toast," she announced. Every head in the room turned toward our table. My stomach twisted into a knot. I knew this was not going to be good. Margaret thrived on attention, and she loved to create drama where there was none. She smiled, a wide, predatory grin that never reached her eyes. She looked directly at Liam, ignoring me completely. "To my wonderful son, Liam," she began. He beamed at her, soaking in the praise. I just stared at my plate. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Then she turned her gaze, slowly, deliberately, toward me. The smile on her face grew wider. The silence in the restaurant deepened. Every diner, every waiter was watching us. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt a cold dread wash over me. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She raised her glass a little higher. Her voice, dripping with false sweetness, echoed in the suddenly silent room. "And cheers to my son's new bride." The words hung in the air. Time seemed to stop. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged in my ears. I looked at Liam. His face was pale. His smile was gone, replaced by a look of pure panic. He stared at his mother, his mouth slightly open. He didn't say anything. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct her. He just sat there, frozen. The entire restaurant went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The couple at the next table stared at us, their forks halfway to their mouths. The waiter who had been approaching our table stopped in his tracks. Everyone was waiting. Waiting for the explosion. Waiting for me to scream, or cry, or throw my drink in her face. But I did none of those things. I simply sat there, feeling the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on me. I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm that comes after the storm has hit and there is nothing left to destroy. The humiliation was so complete, so public, that it was almost surreal. It felt like I was watching a scene from a movie, and I was just an actress playing a part. I looked at Margaret. She was still standing, her glass held high, a triumphant smirk on her face. She had won. She had finally done it. She had publicly declared that I was no longer a part of her son's life. She had erased me. I slowly picked up my own glass of champagne. My hand was perfectly steady. I raised it to meet hers. I looked her directly in the eye. My voice was quiet, but clear. "Which one?" I asked. The color drained from her face. Her smirk vanished. She had expected tears. She had expected a scene. She had not expected a question. She had not expected me to challenge her. For a moment, she was speechless. She just stared at me. her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Liam finally broke his silence. "Chloe, don't," he whispered, his voice shaking. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. I did not take my eyes off his mother. "I'm just curious, Margaret," I said, my voice still calm and even. "Since you're toasting his new bride, I assume you've met her? What's her name?" The silence in the restaurant was now charged with a different kind of energy. It was no longer just shock. It was anticipation. The other diners were leaning in, eager to hear the answer. This was better than any movie. Margaret finally found her voice. "This is not the time or the place for this," she hissed, her eyes darting around the room. She was flustered. She was losing control of the situation, and she hated it. "I think it's the perfect time and place," I replied, my voice getting a little louder. "You're the one who brought it up. You're the one who made the announcement. So please tell us, who is my husband's new bride? We're all dying to know." Liam stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. "That's enough," he said, his voice tight with anger and embarrassment. "We're leaving." He grabbed my arm, trying to pull me out of my chair. I shook him off. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice firm. "Not until your mother answers my question." The tension at our table was a palpable thing. It was a living, breathing entity that was sucking all the air out of the room. I could feel the stares of everyone around us. I knew I was making a scene. I knew I was breaking all the rules of polite society. But I didn't care. Margaret had fired the first shot. I was just returning fire. "It was a joke," Margaret finally stammered, her face a blotchy red. "A poor joke. I'm sorry." She sat down heavily in her chair, avoiding my gaze. "A joke?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You thought it would be funny to announce to a room full of strangers that your son has replaced his wife? On our anniversary? That's your idea of a joke?" Liam's grip on my arm tightened. "Chloe, please," he begged, his eyes pleading with me. "Let's just go home. We can talk about this there." I looked at his face. I saw the desperation in his eyes. But I also saw the guilt. He was not just embarrassed. He was caught. His mother's joke was not a joke at all. It was a slip of the tongue. It was the truth, or at least a version of it. And he knew it. I stood up slowly. I looked down at Liam, then at his mother, who was now staring intently at her wine glass as if it held the secrets of the universe. I felt nothing but a cold, hard anger. The love I had once felt for this man was gone, replaced by a sense of betrayal so profound it left me breathless. "No," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "We're not going to talk about this at home. We're not going to talk about this at all." I turned and walked away from the table. I did not look back. I walked through the silent restaurant, my head held high. I could feel every eye on me, but I didn't care. I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped out into the cool night air. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of freedom. The marriage was over. I knew it with a certainty that was absolute. The only question now was how I was going to make them pay for what they had done. The war had just begun. The walk home felt like a dream. The city lights blurred as I moved through the streets, each step taking me further away from the wreckage of my life. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and emotions. Betrayal, humiliation, anger. But underneath it all, there was a strange sense of clarity. For years, I had been living in a fog, trying to please a man who was never satisfied and a mother-in-law who would never accept me. Now, the fog had lifted. I could see everything with a painful, startling clarity. When I finally reached our apartment, I didn't bother turning on the lights. I walked through the dark rooms, my footsteps echoing in the silence. This was our home, the place where we had built a life together. But it no longer felt like mine. It was just a collection of objects in a space that was now tainted by lies. I went into the bedroom and started to pack a bag. I moved with a mechanical efficiency, my hands pulling clothes from drawers and hangers from the closet. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't sleep in the bed I had shared with a man who was living a double life. As I was zipping up my suitcase, I heard the key in the lock. The front door opened and closed. Liam was home. I braced myself for the confrontation that was to come. "Chloe," he called out, his voice tentative. "Are you here?" I didn't answer. I just stood in the middle of the bedroom, my suitcase at my feet, and waited. He found me a moment later. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes taking in the scene. The open drawers, the empty hangers, the packed bag. The reality of the situation seemed to hit him all at once. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Leaving?" he repeated, as if he couldn't comprehend the word. "Where are you going?" "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I can't stay here." He took a step into the room. "Chloe, we need to talk about what happened tonight," he said, his voice pleading. "My mother, she's difficult. You know how she is." "Difficult?" I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "That's what you call it?" "She publicly humiliated me. She announced to the world that you have a new wife. And you just sat there and let her." "What was I supposed to do?" he asked, his voice rising in frustration. "Start a screaming match in the middle of the restaurant?" "You could have said something," I shot back, my own voice getting louder. "You could have defended me. You could have told her that she was wrong, but you didn't. You just sat there like a coward." "It was a joke, Chloe," he insisted, his voice laced with desperation. "A stupid, horrible joke. She didn't mean it." "Didn't she?" I challenged, my eyes boring into his. "Are you sure about that, Liam? Are you absolutely sure that there isn't another woman? A new bride that your mother prefers over me?" He had the grace to look away. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I had once found endearing. Now it just irritated me. "Of course not," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He wouldn't look me in the eye. That was all the confirmation I needed. "You're a liar," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "You're a liar and a cheat, and your mother is a cruel, vindictive woman who has been trying to destroy our marriage from the very beginning." "That's not true," he protested weakly. "Isn't it?" I asked, taking a step toward him. "Tell me, Liam. Who is she? What's her name?" He just stared at me, his face a mask of guilt and fear. He couldn't even bring himself to deny it again. I felt a surge of rage so powerful it almost knocked me off my feet. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to make him feel a fraction of the pain he had caused me. But I didn't. I reined in my anger, channeling it into a cold, hard resolve. I was not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I was not going to let him see my tears. I picked up my suitcase. "I'm going to a hotel," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "I'll send for the rest of my things later." I started to walk toward the door, but he blocked my path. "Chloe, please," he begged, his hands reaching for me. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I promise." I looked at his hands, then at his face. I saw the desperation in his eyes, but it didn't move me. It was too late for promises. It was too late for apologies. "Get out of my way, Liam," I said, my voice as cold as ice. He flinched as if I had struck him. He slowly lowered his hands and stepped aside. I walked out of the bedroom and down the hallway. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. I just kept walking until I was out of the apartment and back on the street. The first person I called was my friend, Sarah. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, you," she said, her voice cheerful. "How was the anniversary dinner? Did Margaret behave herself?" A sob escaped my lips before I could stop it. The carefully constructed wall of composure I had built around myself crumbled. The tears I had been holding back finally came, hot and fast. Whoa, Chloe, what's wrong? Sarah's voice was instantly filled with concern. What happened? Through my tears, I told her everything. The toast, the silence, the question, Liam's denial, the fight. I told her about the look on his face when I asked him about the other woman. The look that told me everything I needed to know. Sarah listened patiently, letting me cry and rage and vent all my pain and anger. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer any platitudes. She just listened. When I finally ran out of words, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, Sarah spoke, her voice filled with a cold fury that matched my own. That woman is a monster, she said, her voice low and tight. And Liam is a spineless coward. I'm so sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do, I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. I'm at a hotel. I packed a bag. I can't go back there. You're not going back there, Sarah said, her voice firm. You're coming here, right now. I'm not taking no for an answer. I protested, but she wouldn't hear it. You're not going to be alone tonight, she insisted. Get in a cab. I'll be waiting for you. I hung up the phone and did as she said. 20 minutes later, I was standing in front of her apartment building. She met me at the door, pulling me into a tight hug. I leaned against her, feeling the last of my strength give way. She held me up, her arms a circle of safety in a world that had suddenly become a very dangerous place. She led me inside and sat me down on her couch. She made me a cup of tea and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. She didn't ask any more questions. She just sat with me in the quiet of her living room, her presence a silent source of comfort and support. We sat like that for a long time, the silence broken only by the occasional sound of the city outside. As the initial shock began to wear off, the anger returned, stronger and more focused than before. I'm not going to let them get away with this, I said, my voice a low growl. I'm not going to be the victim in this story. I'm not going to just walk away and let them live happily ever after. Sarah looked at me, her eyes searching my face. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm going to find out who this woman is. I'm going to find out the truth. And then I'm going to burn their world to the ground. A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. That's my girl, she said. And I'm going to help you light the match. The next morning, I woke up on Sarah's couch with a stiff neck and a heavy heart. The events of the previous night came rushing back to me, each memory a fresh wave of pain and betrayal. For a moment, I allowed myself to wallow in the misery. I let the tears come again, silent tears of grief for the life I had lost. But then, the anger returned. It was a cleansing fire, burning away the last vestiges of sorrow and leaving behind a cold, hard determination. I was done crying. It was time to act. I sat up and reached for my phone. There were a dozen missed calls from Liam and a string of text messages, each one more desperate than the last. Chloe, please call me. I'm so sorry. We need to talk. This is all a big misunderstanding. I love you. Don't throw away 5 years over a stupid joke. I deleted them all without a second thought. His words were meaningless. They were just the panicked ramblings of a man who had been caught. I opened my laptop and started to dig. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I would recognize it when I saw it. I started with Liam's social media accounts. His profiles were mostly private, but we had hundreds of mutual friends. I went through his friends list, one by one, looking for a name or a face that seemed out of place. It was a tedious, soul-crushing process. With each click, I was confronted with images of our life together. Photos from our wedding, vacation pictures, posts from friends congratulating us on our anniversary just a few days ago. It was a digital monument to a life that was now a lie. After hours of searching, I found her. Her name was Tiffany. Her profile picture was a selfie, her face tilted at a jaunty angle, a bright artificial smile plastered across her lips. She was younger than me, with long blonde hair and a spray tan that was a little too orange. She looked like the kind of woman who would use the word hubby unironically. My heart pounded in my chest as I clicked on her profile. It was private, but we had one mutual friend, Margaret. Of course. I felt a surge of nausea. Margaret wasn't just aware of this woman. She was friends with her on social media. This wasn't a recent development. This had been going on for a while. I took a deep breath and tried to think logically. What was my next step? I could confront Liam with the name, but he would just deny it. He would say she was a friend of his mother's, nothing more. I needed more than a name. I needed proof. I went back to Tiffany's profile and looked at her public information. She listed her job as a freelance yoga instructor. Her hometown was the same as Liam's. There wasn't much else. I did a wider internet search for her name, combining it with Liam's. Nothing came up. I tried her name and Margaret's, still nothing. They were being careful. I sat back, frustrated. I felt like I was hitting a dead end. "What are you doing?" Sarah's voice startled me. She was standing in the doorway of the living room, a cup of coffee in her hand. "I found her," I said, my voice tight. "The other woman. Her name is Tiffany." Sarah came over and looked at the screen. She studied Tiffany's picture for a moment, her lip curled in a sneer. "She looks cheap," she said dismissively. "She's friends with Margaret on Facebook," I told her. Sarah's eyes widened. "You're kidding me," she said. "So the monster-in-law is in on it." "It looks that way," I said, my voice heavy with a fresh wave of betrayal. It was one thing for Liam to cheat on me. It was another thing for his mother to actively participate in it, to befriend her son's mistress, to groom her as my replacement. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice all business. "So what's the plan? How do we nail these two-faced traitors to the wall?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I've hit a wall. Her profile is private. I can't find any connection to Liam online." Sarah thought for a moment. "What about his phone?" she asked. "Or his computer? You still have access to all that, right?" I shook my head. "I'm not going back to the apartment," I said firmly. "I can't. Not yet." "Okay, then we need to think of another way," she said, pacing back and forth in front of the couch. "There has to be a weak link. Someone who knows what's going on but isn't as invested in the lie as Liam and his mother." We brainstormed for a while, running through a list of Liam's friends and family members. Most of them were either too close to Liam or too loyal to Margaret. They would just close ranks and protect their own. Then I thought of someone. Liam's cousin, Jessica. She was a few years younger than us. We had never been close, but she had always been friendly to me. She was a bit of a gossip, but she had a good heart. And most importantly, she didn't seem to be a part of Margaret's inner circle. "What about Jessica?" I asked Sarah. "Liam's cousin. Do you think she would talk to me?" Sarah considered it. "It's a long shot," she said, "but it's better than nothing. What have you got to lose?" I found Jessica's number in my contacts and stared at it for a long time. My finger hovered over the call button. I was nervous. What if she hung up on me? What if she told Liam I had called her? "Just do it," Sarah urged, sensing my hesitation. "The worst she can say is no." I took a deep breath and pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when she finally answered. "Hello?" she said, her voice a little hesitant. "Hi, Jessica. It's Chloe," I said, trying to sound as calm and casual as possible. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, hi, Chloe," she said, her voice now guarded. "Is everything okay?" "I'm not sure," I said honestly. "I was hoping you could help me with something." "Me?" she asked, surprised. "What could I help you with?" I took a leap of faith. "I was wondering if you know someone named Tiffany," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "She's a friend of your Aunt Margaret's, I think. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could hear her breathing, a little too quickly. Tiffany? She finally repeated, her voice strained. I'm not sure. The name sounds familiar, but I can't place her. She was lying. I could hear it in her voice. She knew exactly who I was talking about. She's a yoga instructor, I pressed, trying a different tactic. Long blonde hair. I think she grew up in the same town as you and Liam. Another pause. Oh, that Tiffany, she said. Her voice suddenly bright and cheerful, a little too cheerful. Yeah, I think I know who you mean. She's nice. Why do you ask? No reason, I said, my voice casual. Her name just came up in conversation, and I was curious. So she's a friend of the family? I guess you could say that, Jessica said evasively. She's been around a bit lately. Been around? I repeated. What do you mean? You know, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Family dinners, that kind of thing. My blood ran cold. Family dinners? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. With Liam? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Oh, I have to go, she said abruptly. Someone's at the door. I'll talk to you later, Chloe. Before I could say another word, she hung up. I stared at my phone. The dial tone buzzing in my ear. My hands were shaking. Family dinners. She had been having family dinners with my husband and his mother, behind my back, while I was at home waiting for him to come back from working late. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't just a sordid affair. This was a calculated, deliberate campaign to replace me, and the entire family was in on it. What did she say? Sarah asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. She knows her, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and despair. Tiffany. She's been having family dinners with Liam and Margaret. Sarah let out a low whistle. Wow, she said. They're not even trying to hide it. No, I said, a cold, hard knot forming in the pit of my stomach. They're not. They're flaunting it. They want me to know. They want me to feel powerless. I stood up and started to pace the room, my mind racing. I needed to get into that apartment. I needed to get my hands on Liam's phone and computer. The proof I needed was there. I was sure of it. But how was I going to do it? Liam would have changed the locks by now. He would be expecting me to try something. I needed a plan. I needed a way to get in and out without him knowing. I need to get into the apartment, I said to Sarah, my voice firm. How are you going to do that? She asked. He'll be there. Not if he thinks I'm somewhere else, I said, a plan starting to form in my mind. Not if he thinks I'm on a plane to visit my parents. Sarah's eyes lit up. You're going to create a diversion, she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. I like it. I'm going to do more than that, I said, my voice cold and determined. I'm going to make him think I've given up, that I'm running away with my tail between my legs. And while he's celebrating his victory with his mother and his mistress, I'm going to be gathering the evidence that will destroy them all. The plan was simple, but it required careful execution. The first step was to make Liam believe I was broken. I sent him a single text message, the first communication I had initiated since the disastrous anniversary dinner. You were right, I wrote. We need to talk, but not now. I can't. I need some space. I'm going to my parents' house for a few days to clear my head. I hit send and immediately felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Would he believe it? Or would he see it as a trap? A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with his reply. Of course, I understand. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here for you. I love you. I read the message and felt a fresh wave of disgust. He was so predictable. So eager to believe that he had gotten away with it. His relief was palpable, even through the cold, impersonal medium of a text message. The next step was to make the deception believable. I booked a one-way flight to my parents' city for the following afternoon. I sent a screenshot of the confirmation email to Liam with a short message. My flight details. I'll call you when I land. His reply was almost instantaneous. Okay, travel safe. I imagined him showing the message to his mother, a triumphant smile on his face. She's running away, he would say. It's over. They would probably open a bottle of champagne to celebrate. The thought made my blood boil. The final piece of the puzzle was getting into the apartment. I still had a key, but I was sure Liam would have changed the locks or at least added a security chain. I needed a way in that didn't involve breaking down the door. I thought about the layout of our apartment building. We were on the 3rd floor. There was a fire escape outside our bedroom window. It was old and rusty, but it was there. I had never used it, but I knew it was a possibility. The next afternoon, Sarah drove me to the airport. I checked in for my flight and went through security. I even went to the gate and waited until the boarding announcement was made. Then I slipped away, found a quiet corner, and called a cab. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and concern. We were parked a block away from my apartment building, the city lights casting long shadows on the street. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. I was wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap, my hair tucked up underneath. I felt like a character in a spy movie. What if he's there? She asked. He won't be, I said, my voice confident. His flight tracking app will tell him that my plane has taken off. He thinks I'm halfway to my parents' house by now. He and Margaret are probably having a celebratory dinner with Tiffany as we speak. The thought of them toasting to my departure filled me with a fresh surge of adrenaline. I was not going to let them win. I got out of the car and walked toward the building. I slipped into the alleyway and found the fire escape. It was even rustier than I remembered. I hesitated for a moment, looking up at the dark metal structure. This was insane. What was I doing? Then I thought of Margaret's triumphant smirk. I thought of Liam's weak denials. I thought of Tiffany's cheap smile. The anger returned, pushing aside the fear. I started to climb. The metal rungs were cold and slick beneath my fingers. The structure groaned and creaked with every movement. I tried not to look down. I focused on the window, my target. When I finally reached the 3rd floor landing, my heart was pounding in my chest. I crept over to the bedroom window and peered inside. The room was dark and empty. I tried the window. It was locked. Of course, Liam was not a complete idiot. I took a deep breath and pulled a small tool from my pocket. A credit card. It was an old trick I had seen in movies. I didn't know if it would actually work, but I had to try. I slid the card into the gap between the window and the frame. I jiggled it up and down, trying to find the latch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I heard a faint click. The window slid open. I held my breath, waiting for an alarm to go off. But there was only silence. I slipped inside, my feet landing softly on the carpet. I was in. I stood in the darkness for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. The apartment was silent and still. It felt strange to be here, an intruder in my own home. I wasted no time. I went straight to Liam's office. His laptop was on the desk, closed. I opened it and pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life, asking for a password. My heart sank. I had been so focused on getting into the apartment that I hadn't even considered this. What was his password? He had changed it a few months ago after a security scare at his office. I had no idea what it could be. I tried a few of our old passwords. Our anniversary date. The name of our first pet. His mother's birthday. Nothing worked. After 3 failed attempts, the computer locked me out for 5 minutes. I cursed under my breath. I was running out of time. I couldn't stay here all night. I looked around the office, my eyes scanning the shelves and the desk for any clues. A sticky note. A piece of paper. Anything. Then I saw it. Tucked inside a book on his shelf, a small, folded piece of paper was sticking out. My heart leaped. I pulled it out and unfolded it. On it was a single word: Tiffany, 23. I stared at the paper, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Of course. How cliché. How pathetic. He had used her name as his password. The woman he was cheating on me with. The woman his mother wanted him to marry. I waited for the 5-minute lockout to end, my fingers drumming impatiently on the desk. As soon as the login screen reappeared, I typed in the password: Tiffany, 123. The computer unlocked. I was in. I felt a surge of triumph, quickly followed by a wave of dread. I was about to open Pandora's box. I knew that whatever I found on this computer would change my life forever. There was no going back. I took a deep breath and started to search. I opened his email account first. It was a sea of work-related messages and spam. I did a search for Tiffany's name. Dozens of emails popped up. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the first one. It was from Liam to Tiffany, sent a few weeks ago. I miss you, it said. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone had stabbed me. I quickly scanned the rest of the emails. They were a sickening chronicle of their affair. Flirtatious messages, plans for secret meetings, declarations of love. Then I found an email from Margaret to Liam. The subject line was, "The future." I spoke to Tiffany today. It began. She is a lovely girl, so much more suitable for you than Chloe. She understands the importance of family. She will give you beautiful children. It is time to end this charade with your wife. The longer you wait, the harder it will be. I had to stop reading. I felt like I was going to be sick. His own mother was actively encouraging him to leave me. She was orchestrating my replacement. I took a few deep breaths, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. I needed to focus. I needed to find something more. Something concrete. Something I could use. I went back to the emails and continued to dig. I found travel confirmations for weekend trips Liam had taken without me. Trips he had told me were for work, but the confirmations were for 2 people, Liam and Tiffany. I found receipts for expensive jewelry, a diamond necklace, a pair of earrings, gifts he had bought for her, gifts he had never bought for me. Then I found the bombshell. It was an email from a lawyer. The subject line was divorce proceedings. I clicked on it, my heart in my throat. It was a draft of a divorce petition. Liam was the petitioner. I was the respondent. The grounds for divorce were listed as irreconcilable differences, but that wasn't the worst part. The petition also included a proposed settlement. He was offering me a pittance, a small lump sum payment that was a fraction of what I was legally entitled to. He was trying to screw me over. He was trying to leave me with nothing. Attached to the email was a financial statement. It listed all of our joint assets: the apartment, our savings account, our investments. But the numbers were all wrong. They were much lower than they should have been. I scrolled down and found the reason why. There were a series of large transfers from our joint account to a private account in Liam's name only. He had been secretly draining our savings for months. He had been hiding money from me. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. This was not just an affair. This was a conspiracy. A carefully planned, meticulously executed plot to get rid of me and leave me with nothing. I felt a cold, hard rage settle over me. It was a rage so pure and so intense that it burned away all the pain and the grief. All that was left was a single burning desire for revenge. I started to download everything: the emails, the travel confirmations, the receipts, the divorce petition, the financial statements. I saved it all to a flash drive that I had brought with me. As the files were transferring, I did one last search. I went into his web history. I searched for Tiffany's name again. This time, I found something new: a link to a wedding planning website. I clicked on it. It was a personalized wedding page, the kind that couples create to share information with their guests. At the top of the page, in a flowing, elegant script, were the words, Liam and Tiffany, tying the knot. There was a photo of them. They were standing on a beach, their arms around each other, beaming at the camera. They looked so happy, so in love. Below the photo was the date of the wedding. It was 6 months from now. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. They had a wedding date. They had a wedding website. They were planning a future together, a future that was built on the ruins of my life. The flash drive finished downloading. I ejected it and put it in my pocket. I closed the laptop and stood up. I had what I needed. I had the proof. I had the ammunition. I took one last look around the office. The room that had once been a symbol of our shared future was now a crime scene, a monument to his betrayal. I walked out of the office and back into the bedroom. I slipped out the window and back onto the fire escape. I didn't look back. As I climbed down the rusty ladder, my mind was clear and focused. The game had changed. This was no longer just about exposing an affair. This was about justice. This was about making them pay for every lie, every betrayal, every stolen dollar. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a victim. They thought they had won. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. The show was just beginning, and I was going to be the one writing the final act. Back at Sarah's apartment, I laid out the evidence on her coffee table. The emails, the financial statements, the wedding website. It was a devastating collection of deceit and betrayal. Sarah looked at it all, her face a mixture of shock and fury. "I knew he was a snake," she said, her voice low and tight. "But this is a whole new level of evil. And his mother? She's a monster." "They were planning to leave me with nothing," I said, my voice flat. "They were stealing from me, lying to me, and planning their perfect future behind my back." "So what are you going to do?" Sarah asked, her eyes meeting mine. "Are you going to go to a lawyer?" "Oh, I'm going to a lawyer," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "But not yet. First, I'm going to have a little fun." The rage had not subsided. If anything, it had solidified into something harder, sharper. It was no longer a wild, uncontrollable fire. It was a focused, deliberate weapon. And I was going to wield it with precision. My first move was to play the part they had assigned me, the broken-hearted wife fleeing to her parents for comfort. I called Liam from a payphone at a bus station, my voice choked with fake sobs. "I'm at my parents' house," I lied, my voice trembling. I can't talk right now. It's too hard." "I understand," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Just know that I'm thinking of you. We'll get through this, Chloe. I promise." I wanted to laugh. He was so smug, so confident in his deception. He had no idea that I was holding a grenade with the pin pulled. The next few days were a blur of activity. I met with a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davies. I showed her the evidence I had collected. She looked at it all, her expression growing more and more grim. "This is extensive," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of professional admiration and personal disgust. "Mr. Henderson and his mother have been very thorough in their deception, but they've also been very sloppy." She explained my options. With the evidence I had, I could not only file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, but I could also sue him for fraud. The hidden assets, the secret transfers. It was all a clear case of financial misconduct. "You're in a very strong position, Chloe," she said, her voice firm. "We can make him pay for this. We can make sure you get everything you're entitled to, and then some." We spent the next few hours mapping out a legal strategy. We would file for divorce immediately, but we would keep it quiet for now. We would also file a motion to freeze all of his assets, including the secret account. The element of surprise was our greatest weapon. While Ms. Davies prepared the legal paperwork, I worked on my own plan. A plan for a more personal, more public form of justice. I went back to the wedding website. It had a section for RSVPs. I clicked on it. It was a public form, open to anyone with the link. An idea began to form in my mind. A wicked, delicious idea. I spent the next few hours crafting a message. It was a short, simple story. The story of a 5-year marriage, a secret affair, a manipulative mother-in-law, and a stolen future. I wrote it all out, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I didn't use any names, but the details were specific enough that anyone who knew them would know exactly who I was talking about. When I was done, I went back to the RSVP form. In the comments section, I pasted my story. Then, under the question, "Will you be attending?" I checked no. I hit submit and felt a thrill of vindictive pleasure. It was a small act of defiance, a digital shot across the bow. But it was just the beginning. My next target was Margaret. I knew that her social standing was everything to her. She was the president of the local women's club, a prominent member of several charities, and a self-proclaimed pillar of the community. Her reputation was her most prized possession, and I was about to shatter it. I did some research and found out that she was hosting her annual charity luncheon in 2 weeks. It was the biggest social event of the year for her circle. Everyone who was anyone would be there. It was the perfect stage for the final act of my revenge. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I met with Ms. Davies several times, finalizing our legal strategy. We had the divorce papers ready to be served. We had the motion to freeze his assets ready to be filed. Everything was in place. I also did some more digging into Tiffany. I found out that her freelance yoga instructor business was a sham. She had a string of wealthy older boyfriends. She was a professional gold digger, and Liam was her latest mark. I even found out that she was in debt. She had maxed out several credit cards and was being pursued by collection agencies. She wasn't just in love with Liam. She was in love with his money, or what she thought was his money. The day of the charity luncheon arrived. I chose my outfit carefully. A simple, elegant black dress. I wanted to look like a widow, a woman in mourning for her dead marriage. I arrived at the country club where the luncheon was being held. The room was filled with women in expensive dresses and jewelry. They were all laughing and chatting, sipping champagne and nibbling on hors d'oeuvres. It was a scene straight out of a movie about the vapid lives of the rich and bored. I saw Margaret holding court in the center of the room. She was wearing a bright red dress, a triumphant smile on her face. She looked like the queen of her own little kingdom. Tiffany was by her side, clinging to Liam's arm. He looked a little uncomfortable, but he was playing the part of the devoted son and partner. They were the picture of a happy family. A family built on a foundation of lies. I took a deep breath and walked into the room. A few heads turned in my direction. I saw a few whispers exchanged behind manicured hands. They knew who I was. They had all heard the rumors. I ignored them and walked straight toward Margaret. As I got closer, the conversation around her died down. One by one, the women in her circle turned to look at me. Margaret's smile faded when she saw me. A look of pure shock and fury crossed her face. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I came to support your charity, Margaret," I said, my voice sweet and innocent. "It's for a good cause, isn't it?" Tiffany looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. Liam looked like he was about to have a heart attack. His face was pale and slick with sweat. "You're not welcome here," Margaret said, her voice tight with rage. "Leave. Now." "I don't think so," I said, my voice still calm and even. "I believe I have a right to be here. After all, I'm still part of this family. For now, at least." I let that last phrase hang in the air for a moment. I saw a flicker of panic in Liam's eyes. Just then, a man in a suit walked up to our little group. He was holding a stack of papers. "Liam Henderson?" he asked, his voice professional and detached. Liam nodded, his eyes darting nervously from the man to me. "You've been served," the man said, handing him the papers. Liam took them, his hands trembling. He looked down at the top page. His eyes widened in horror. "What is this?" he whispered. "It's a divorce petition," I said. my voice loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear, and a motion to freeze all of your assets, including the secret account where you've been hiding our money. A collective gasp went through the crowd of women around us. They were all staring at Liam, their eyes wide with shock and morbid curiosity. Margaret's face was a mask of fury. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice shrill and ugly. "How dare you do this to my son?" "He did it to himself," I said, my voice cold and hard. "And you helped him." I turned to Tiffany, who was staring at the divorce papers in Liam's hand as if they were a venomous snake. "I hope you weren't counting on that wedding," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "Because I'm afraid it's been canceled. Permanently." Tiffany's face crumpled. The reality of the situation seemed to hit her all at once. The dream of a wealthy husband and a life of luxury was evaporating before her eyes. But he loves me," she stammered, looking at Liam for confirmation. Liam just stood there, speechless, his face ashen. He couldn't even look at her. "He doesn't love you," I said, my voice filled with pity. "He loves the idea of you. The idea of a younger, more compliant wife who won't challenge him. The idea of a new life that his mother approves of. But that life is a fantasy, and it's over." I turned my attention back to Margaret. She was staring at me, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "You've ruined everything," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "No, Margaret," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You ruined everything. You and your pathetic, spineless son. You thought you could just throw me away like a piece of trash. You thought you could get away with it. But you were wrong." I took a step closer to her, my eyes boring into hers. "I want you to remember this moment," I said, my voice a low growl. "I want you to remember the day that your perfect little world came crashing down around you. I want you to remember the look on your friends' faces as they witnessed your public humiliation. Because this is just the beginning. I'm not done with you yet. Not by a long shot." I turned and walked away, leaving them in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of silent, staring women. The queen had been dethroned. The golden couple had been exposed. The perfect family had been shattered. As I walked out of the country club and into the bright sunlight, I felt a sense of profound, exhilarating freedom. The war was over, and I had won. The aftermath was even more satisfying than I could have imagined. The story of the charity luncheon spread like wildfire through the town's social circles. Margaret became a pariah overnight. Her friends, who had once flocked to her side, now avoided her like the plague. She was forced to resign as president of the women's club. Her reign was over. Liam was in even worse shape. With his assets frozen, he was financially crippled. He couldn't afford his high-priced lawyer. He couldn't afford to keep the apartment. He was forced to move back in with his mother, a fate that I'm sure was a punishment in itself. Tiffany, true to form, disappeared as soon as the money dried up. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved to another city, presumably in search of her next wealthy victim. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The divorce was quick and brutal. With the evidence I had, Liam had no choice but to agree to all of my terms. I got the apartment. I got more than half of our joint assets, including the money he had tried to hide from me. I got everything I was entitled to, and then some. Ms. Davies was a magician. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was packing up the last of Liam's things from the apartment. I had boxed up his clothes, his books, his personal effects. I was ready to erase the last traces of him from my life. As I was taping up the last box, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Liam standing there. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who had been through a war and lost. "What do you want, Liam?" I asked, my voice cold. "I came to get my things," he said, his voice hoarse. "They're right here," I said, gesturing to the stack of boxes in the hallway. "Take them and go." He didn't move. He just stood there, looking at me with a strange expression on his face. It was a mixture of sadness, regret, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "I'm sorry, Chloe," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. For everything." I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no pity, just a vast, empty indifference. "It's too late for that, Liam," I said, my voice flat. "Your apologies are worthless." "I know," he said, his head bowed in shame. "I know I messed up. I let my mother get in my head. I let her convince me that I wanted something I didn't. I destroyed everything. Our marriage, our life, for nothing. For a younger, more suitable wife," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Don't forget that part." He flinched as if I had struck him. "She's gone," he said. "She left as soon as the money was gone. You were right about her." "I was right about a lot of things," I said, my voice hard. "But you didn't want to listen." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Is there any chance at all that you could forgive me?" I laughed, a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. "Forgive you?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You want me to forgive you? After everything you did? After you lied to me, cheated on me, stole from me, and tried to leave me with nothing? You must be joking." "I know it's a lot to ask," he said, his voice desperate. "But I still love you, Chloe. I never stopped loving you." "You have a very strange way of showing it," I said, my voice cold as ice. "But it doesn't matter anymore. Whatever we had is dead. You killed it. You and your mother. You buried it under a mountain of lies and deceit." I stepped back and started to close the door. "Goodbye, Liam," I said, my voice firm. "Get your things and get out of my life. I never want to see you again." He reached out a hand as if to stop me, but it was too late. I closed the door in his face and locked it. I leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest. A few moments later, I heard him picking up the boxes. I heard his footsteps as he walked away. Then there was silence. He was gone. For good. I stood there for a long time listening to the silence. It was a new kind of silence. A peaceful silence. A silence that was all my own. A few days later, I was having dinner with Sarah at my apartment. We were celebrating. Celebrating my freedom. Celebrating my victory. "To Chloe," Sarah said, raising her glass of wine. "The strongest, bravest, most badass woman I know." I smiled and clinked my glass against hers. "To new beginnings," I said. We ate and drank and talked for hours. We laughed about the look on Margaret's face at the luncheon. We speculated about Liam's miserable new life with his mother. We toasted to my bright, unencumbered future. As the night was winding down, Sarah turned to me, her expression serious. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I mean, really okay?" I thought about her question for a moment. Was I okay? I had been through a war. I had been betrayed by the two people who were supposed to love me most. I had lost my marriage, my home, my sense of security. But I had also found a strength I never knew I had. I had fought back. I had won. I had taken back my life. "I'm better than okay," I said, my voice filled with a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in years. "I'm free." And I was. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Not Liam's wife. Not Margaret's daughter-in-law. Just Chloe. And that was more than enough. The months that followed were a period of rediscovery. I reconnected with old friends. I took up new hobbies. I traveled. I did all the things I had put on hold while I was trying to be the perfect wife. I slowly, carefully began to build a new life for myself. A life that was based on my own terms. A life that was free from the suffocating influence of Liam and his mother. One day, about a year after the divorce, I ran into Jessica, Liam's cousin, at a coffee shop. She saw me and immediately looked away, her face flushing with embarrassment. I walked over to her table. "Hi, Jessica," I said, my voice friendly. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with guilt. "Hi, Chloe," she said, her voice small. I, I'm so sorry. For everything." "It's okay," I said, and I meant it. I was so far removed from the pain and the anger that it all felt like a distant memory. "No, it's not," she said, her voice trembling. "I should have said something. I should have warned you, but I was scared of my aunt, of what she would do." "I understand," I said, my voice gentle. "She's an intimidating woman." "She's a monster," Jessica said, her voice filled with a sudden venom. "She ruined Liam's life. He's a shell of the man he used to be. He's miserable, and he deserves it." She told me that Liam was still living with Margaret. He had lost his job. He had no friends. He just sat in his room all day, a ghost in his own childhood home. Margaret, she said, was just as miserable. Her social life was non-existent. Her charities had all found new patrons. She was alone and bitter, a queen without a kingdom. I listened to her story, and I felt a strange sense of detachment. Their misery was no longer my concern. It was a problem of their own making. "I have to go," I said, my voice polite but firm. "It was good to see you, Jessica." "You too, Chloe," she said, her voice filled with a genuine warmth. "You look happy." "I am," I said, and I smiled. A real smile. A happy smile. As I walked out of the coffee shop and into the bright afternoon sun, I thought about her words. I was happy. Truly, deeply happy. I had been through the fire, and I had come out the other side, stronger and more resilient than before. I had lost a husband, but I had found myself. And that was a trade I would make any day. The story could have ended there. A neat, tidy conclusion with the villains vanquished and the hero riding off into the sunset. But life is rarely so simple. A few more months passed. I was thriving. My career was taking off. I had a new circle of friends, people who valued me for who I was, not for who I was married to. I was even starting to date again, tentatively at first, but with a growing sense of hope and excitement. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. It was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. The return address was Margaret's. My first instinct was to throw it in the trash. I didn't want to hear from her. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a response. But my curiosity got the better of me. What could she possibly have to say to me now? I opened the letter, my hands steady. The handwriting was elegant and precise, just like her. "Dear Chloe," it began. "I am writing to you not to ask for your forgiveness, for I know I do not deserve it. I am writing to you to offer an explanation, however inadequate it may be." I sat down and read the rest of the letter. It was a long, rambling confession, a pathetic attempt at self-justification. She wrote about her own unhappy marriage, about her husband's infidelities, about the bitterness and resentment that had poisoned her life. She wrote that she had seen the same weakness in Liam that she had seen in his father, a desire to please everyone, a lack of a strong moral compass. She had been afraid that I would leave him, that he would end up alone and unhappy. So, she had decided to take matters into her own hands. She had found Tiffany, a woman she thought she could control, a woman who would be so grateful for the money and the status that she would never challenge Liam, never push him, never leave him. "I know now that I was wrong," she wrote. "I did not save my son. I destroyed him. And in the process, I destroyed myself. I am alone, Chloe. I have lost everything that ever mattered to me. My son, my friends, my reputation. I am writing to you now because I have no one else to talk to." She ended the letter with a plea. "I know it is too much to ask, but I would like to see you, to talk to you, to apologize in person. Please, Chloe, I have nothing left." I read the letter twice, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Pity, contempt, and a small, cold sliver of satisfaction. She had gotten what she deserved. She had sowed the seeds of her own destruction, and now she was reaping the bitter harvest. I thought about her request. To see her. To talk to her. To give her the absolution she so desperately craved. For a moment, I was tempted. I could go to her house. I could sit across from her and watch her beg for my forgiveness. I could savor the moment of her complete and utter defeat. But then I realized something. Her misery was no longer my concern. Her pain was no longer my victory. I was free of her. I was free of them both. To see her now would be to re-enter their toxic world. To give her a foothold in my new life. To allow her to once again make her problems my own. I was not going to do that. I was not going to give her that power over me. I took the letter and walked into the kitchen. I turned on the gas stove and held the corner of the paper to the flame. I watched as it caught fire, the elegant script turning to black ash. I dropped the burning letter into the sink and watched it turn to nothing. As the last embers died out, I felt a sense of finality. A sense of closure that was more satisfying than any apology could ever be. The past was finally in the past. It had no power over me anymore. My future was a blank page. And I was the only one holding the pen. I was ready to write my own story. A story of happiness, of success, of love. A story that had nothing to do with Liam or Margaret or the life I had left behind. The final chapter of that old life came to a close in a way I never expected. About a year after I burned Margaret's letter, I received a call from Jessica. Her voice was strained and she sounded like she had been crying. "Chloe," she said, her voice catching. I thought you should know. It's Liam." My heart skipped a beat. "What about him?" I asked, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "He's gone," she said, her voice breaking. He took his own life." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had to sit down. I couldn't breathe. Liam was dead. Jessica told me the details. He had been found in his car in the garage of Margaret's house. He had left a note. It was addressed to his mother. "I can't do this anymore," it said. "I can't live like this. Tell Chloe I'm sorry." I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. I had wished him misery. I had wished him a life of regret and loneliness. But I had never wished him dead. The news of his death sent a shockwave through my carefully constructed new life. All the old feelings came rushing back. The anger, the betrayal, the grief. But this time they were mixed with a new, more complicated emotion. Guilt. Was this my fault? Had I pushed him too far? Had my quest for revenge led to this? I spent the next few days in a daze wrestling with these questions. Sarah tried to comfort me. "This is not on you, Chloe," she said, her voice firm. This was his choice. He was a weak man who couldn't face the consequences of his own actions. I knew she was right, logically, but my heart told a different story. I had wanted to hurt him. I had wanted to make him pay. And now he had paid the ultimate price. A few days later, I received another call. It was from a lawyer I didn't know. He told me that Liam had left a will, and he had left something for me. I was shocked. I couldn't imagine what he could possibly have left me. We had been divorced for years. He had nothing left to give. I met with the lawyer the next day. He handed me a small sealed envelope. "This was found with the will," he said. "It's for you." I opened the envelope, my hands trembling. Inside was a single key, a key to a safe deposit box. There was also a short handwritten note from Liam. "Chloe," it said, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but if you can find it in your heart to do one last thing for me, please go to this box. There is something there that I want you to have. It's the only good thing I have left to give." I was torn. Part of me wanted to throw the key away, to sever this final tie to him. But another part of me was curious. What could he possibly have left me? I went to the bank the next day. I showed the key and the letter to the bank manager. He led me to a private room and brought me the safe deposit box. I opened it, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, there was only one thing: a life insurance policy. I took it out and looked at it. It was a policy for $1 million, and the sole beneficiary was me. I stared at the policy, my mind reeling. The policy was dated from the day after our divorce was finalized. He had taken out a life insurance policy and made me the beneficiary, and he had been paying the premiums ever since. I sat there in the silence of the bank vault, trying to process what this meant. It was a final, desperate act of penance. A way to try to make amends for all the money he had stolen from me. A way to try to provide for me, even in death. But it was more than that. It was a final, tragic confession. A confession that he had never stopped loving me. A confession that he knew his life was over the day our marriage ended. I walked out of the bank and into the bright sunlight, the life insurance policy clutched in my hand. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want his money. It felt like blood money. I went home and called Sarah. I told her about the policy. She was silent for a long time. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I don't know," I said, my voice filled with a turmoil of conflicting emotions. I don't want it, but I also feel like I have to accept it. For him. "It's not for him, Chloe," she said, her voice gentle. "It's for you. It's a chance for a fresh start. A real fresh start. A chance to build a life that is completely your own." I thought about her words. A fresh start. A new life. It was what I had been working toward for the past 2 years. And now, Liam, in his own tragic way, had given me the means to achieve it. I decided to accept the money, but I also decided that I would not keep it for myself. I would use it to do something good. Something that would honor the memory of the man Liam had been before his mother's poison had corrupted him. I set up a charitable foundation in his name. A foundation that provided scholarships for underprivileged students who wanted to go to college. It was a way to turn his tragic end into a new beginning for someone else. The foundation became my new passion. I poured all my energy into it. It gave me a sense of purpose, a sense of peace. A few months later, I was at a fundraising event for the foundation. I was giving a speech, talking about the importance of second chances. As I looked out at the crowd, I saw a familiar face in the back of the room. It was Margaret. She was standing alone, her face pale and drawn. She looked 10 years older than the last time I had seen her. After the speech, she approached me. "Chloe," she said, her voice a hoarse whisper. I just wanted to say thank you." I looked at her, and for the first time I saw not a monster, but a broken, grieving mother. A woman who had lost her son and had nothing left to live for. "You've created something beautiful out of something so terrible," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "You've given his life a meaning that I never could." She reached into her purse and pulled out a check. She handed it to me. It was for a substantial amount of money. "I want to help," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to be a part of this. It's the only thing I have left of him." I took the check, my mind a whirlwind of emotions: forgiveness, compassion, and a strange sense of peace. The circle was finally complete. The war was over, and in the end, there were no winners or losers, just a group of broken people trying to find a way to heal. I never saw Margaret again. I heard that she moved away, to a quiet town by the sea. I hope she found some measure of peace there. As for me, I continued to build my new life. The foundation grew and flourished. I found love again. A quiet, steady love with a good man who cherished me for who I was. I never forgot Liam. I never forgot the pain and the betrayal. But I also never forgot the love we once shared. And in the end, I chose to remember the good. Life is a complicated, messy business. It's full of joy and sorrow, love and loss, betrayal and forgiveness. But through it all, there is always hope. There is always the possibility of a new beginning. I had been to the darkest of places, but I had found my way back to the light. I had been broken, but I had put myself back together again, stronger and more whole than before. I had survived. And that, in itself, was a victory. A quiet, personal victory that was more satisfying than any revenge could ever be. I had found my peace, and that was all that mattered.